Tonight, Kelly Swanson takes us back to Pride's Hollow, her tiny little town about a mile and a hair past nowhere, where the simple life is revered, ordinary heroes are appreciated, and the stories aren't fancy, they're just about people. Please welcome Kelly Swanson.
She was leaning against the counter, sorting tips. Worn hands, worn heart, and aching hips. Every moment or so, almost evenly spaced, she'd blow the hair out of her face. She'd once been pretty, or so they said, when she wore that crown upon her head. And from her flower-covered float, she had blown a kiss and swore life couldn't get any better than this. And she'd been right. The glory days behind her. Traded in that carriage for this dusty diner. Worn cliche, same tired old story of another small-town princess who fades from glory. You see, long ago, she stopped dreaming or expecting her life to have much meaning. Going through the motions bit by bit, convinced this was as good as it would get. In her stained apron, another lunch special gone by. Cup of veggie soup, corned beef on rye. Old Man Barley's favorite. Every day, 5:30. Why, he never missed a day, except the day he died. And even then, she could have swore a hint of that aftershave he wore, drifting over his empty place, and no one had the heart to take. So it was a day just like the one before. Like so many others more, smell of burned coffee in the air, mixed in with just a twinge of despair. A hint or two of loneliness. A couple engaged in new love's bliss. Some folks rushing A to Z, and some with simply nowhere else to be. What they had in common was that no one knew what was soon to come, or rather who. They didn't sense the shifting wind or what it would be bringing in from a few miles away and down the road a piece, where Buster's Bait and Tackle and the airport meet. The storm took hold, its fury sounded, and all the outbound flights were grounded. Much to the dismay of the travelers headed home from convention, into whose plans fate had thrown a wrench in. Now found themselves in the middle of God knows where we are, set out in hopes of finding a bar. But as fate and the mayor's wife would proclaim, there'd be no bar on a road bearing her name. And so all the travelers were able to find was this dusty diner about a block off Route 29. As soon as the door's bell announced they were there, every head lifted and every fork paused in midair. In one universal expression, while well-meaning at heart, it said, "We know you ain't from around these here parts." Breaking into their silence, joining them to dine, was this group of strangers, and not just any kind, but a very select group. They are oft known to say, the kind who change lives each and every day. The board breakers, the dream makers, the starfish seekers, known to the world as motivational speakers. to a town like this was something to balk at these people who got paid to talk. And so, on this unsuspecting night, a storm, a diner, and a grounded flight gave birth to a story that has traveled this far of 4 motivational speakers and a waitress named Star. And so the speakers stood there in the doorway of that dusty diner, their overly whitened grins piercing through the smog of griddle grease and unkempt curiosity, their arms outstretched as if in eager anticipation of their own arrival. Waiting to be noticed. For when you spend your career being announced, well, you sort of get used to it. I should know. My mother asked me to say the blessing at Christmas, and I handed her a bio and an introduction. You know you're a motivational speaker when people ask you what you speak about and you hesitate because you're not really sure. But you know it'll take you an hour to explain it. Or when you travel so much, you travel all the time, and you know you travel a lot when you go home and you steal your own towels. Yesterday, I went to the grocery store and put my shoes up on the conveyor belt. You know you're a motivational speaker when you're walking down the hallways of the NSA convention with one of your best buds, Jake French, who's in a wheelchair and can't feel anything from the neck down, whose best friend left him to die. And I'm like, Jake, man, in my own twisted mind, I'm jealous because you got a better story than mine. So anyway, the speakers stood there in that diner, and while Star explained the specials, the folks in Pride's Hollow started their own subtle interrogation disguised as small talk. And the speakers, finding themselves in the middle of a new audience, started doing what they do best, talking and self-promoting. Hello, my name is Charles T. Rance, giving you a second chance to change your dismal circumstance and break through all your butts and can'ts. And just to show you that you can, we will break this board up with your hand, and you will finally understand what it means to live as a courageous man. And just for you, and only today, I got a special deal coming your way. If you buy now and don't delay, I'll knock $1,000 off of what you pay. Hi, my name is Emily. You'll know me. I help you find your inner glee. You'll recognize my bumblebee that 12 other speakers have like me. I have 47 acronyms painted on brightly colored gems that will sing to the tune of our favorite hymns. Come on, ladies, move those limbs. When life gives you a failing grade, my words of joy come to your aid and help you turn lemons into lemonade to show you happy doesn't happen, it is made. You can do it, you will see, with just my box set of CDs. Comes with a gift if you buy 3, and of course an autograph from me. You should already know me. As Dr. Leaks. I'm not a speaker. I'm an expert who speaks. My book's been on the bestseller list for 27 weeks. Find me if it's a thought leader you seek. My fee's so high you won't find it in print, because a moment with me is a moment well spent. I like my water tepid with a bit of mint. Here's my hotel sheet count. Requirement. For just 50K, spend the day at my feet, and I will call you one of my elite. And at the end of that time, you'll come to see you never had a chance at becoming as successful as me. Namaste. I bring you peace and light and help you find your inner might to unlock your garden's night. My only goal is to enlight. I bring aromatic healing for the spirit lost, hot coals for you to walk across. I'm not in this for the applause, for me and the Dalai Lama share a cause. I'm not in this for the fees, just perhaps a wedge of cheese. Or a donation for a child in Belize. For you can't put a price on inner peace. And so, in the middle of that storm, as it danced around that diner, a group of unlikely strangers became friends. Or rather, somewhere along the way to it. You see, Charles T. Rance was sitting over there with Ned and Horace. He was teaching them how to break a board with their hands and to become more courageous. Ned and Horace's combined age is 186. They spend every day on the bench out front of Buster's Bait and Tackle, and their biggest challenge is whether to take a nap before lunch or after. Bitsy was in hog heaven, sitting over there with that fella called himself Namaste. And he was teaching her a new meditating pose. And she was excited because you got to understand, Bitsy, if you don't know her, she lives to be motivated. She got a whole wall full of those self-help books. She never actually motivated enough to read them. But she said, that's okay. The title alone tells you everything you need to know. She says, she can just walk through the room and she's a whole new woman. Emily found herself sitting in the middle of a group of farmers. And if you know farmers like I do, they don't exactly live to be motivated. You won't find them sitting around a tractor at their break discussing ways to form a stronger team. And so they made it quite clear. They thought this motivational speaking business was nonsense. Give us the facts. People is what they are. And they asked Emily the question she'd been asking herself. Who are you to think you can change the world? Dr. Leaks found it odd that this waitress named Star, a woman of obvious low opportunity and life experience, would be so affected by his order of vegetable soup and corned beef on rye. He didn't know whose seat he was sitting in at exactly 5:30. And maybe that's why, if you believe in sayings such as this, that he felt convicted, if you will. Thrown back to a time when he too stood once behind a counter, a man of limited opportunity and exposure. And for a reason even he couldn't place, he took out his card, handed it to Star, and said, "Call me." And just as quickly as the storm came into town, it left, taking the speakers with it, as checks were paid and conversations ended. And for some, the story ended right there as they left that diner with no more lingering thought than whether the chicken was worth the price. But some didn't. Emily's motivational speaker quotes were hung on the wall and repeated every morning in that diner before work. Grunt, the owner of the diner, he redid the menus according to Charles's suggestions and started selling 13.7% more. Joe Jr., the assistant cook, came down with a case of chronic dry eye. Bless his heart, but he survived. And now he's got the perfect signature story to go out and become a motivational speaker on his own. You'll see him at the next NSA convention. And every once in a while, when there's a new visitor at the Senior Citizen Center, Ned and Horace will be asked to give a demonstration of how you break a board with your hand. Emily left the diner that night and quit her job because she believed what those farmers said. Who are you to think you can change the world? And then a couple of weeks later, she got a letter from a face she couldn't remember, from a place she didn't even remember she'd been in. A letter that said, "Thank you. Your words saved my life." And she dusted herself off, and she got back up. And that was the day she stopped trying to be something for everybody, and she learned to be everything for a few. That was the day she killed the bumblebee, because she hated bumblebees. The only reason she did it was somebody told her it was a good idea. It was the right way. Well, that was also the day she stopped worrying about the right way and started worrying about her own way. Because to say there is one right way, one accepted way, one validated way, one held up way of doing this business is like saying there's one best speaker, which is like saying there's one best musician, and that the world should only hear one song. And that robs this industry, and it robs this world of a lot of beautiful music. I mean, let's face it. Some of us are never going to fill coliseums. We're never going to get on a bestseller list or have anybody know our name. But that's okay, because that doesn't mean our story matters any less. And sometimes I think it might matter even more, because some of you are being sent out to the loneliest, darkest, remotest places to be the only light they have ever seen before. And don't you dare put a price on that. Because you know you're a motivational speaker when you spend hours and weeks and months and years working on this one speech and still find it lacking. When you get 30 minutes on a stage, but you spent 3 days on dusty highways, sitting in the back of the airplane, in empty hotel rooms, kissing your kid goodnight over the phone, missing their moments so you can help them find theirs. When you put yourself up there and out there to be judged and evaluated and critiqued by a group of people who hold you to a higher plane of accountability, as if expecting you to be perfect, when it is not the perfect who choose this profession. But anything but. It's the ones who failed over and over and got back up. It's the ones who have fallen. It's the ones who have conquered and overcome tremendous obstacles. It's the ones who have saved and the ones who have been saved. It's the ones who had everything and lost it, and the ones who had nothing and gained it all. It is the ones who had no hope and found it, and now just want to go out there and be that hope to others and share the hope that is within them. You know you're a motivational speaker when you don't focus on what you do, you focus on why you do it. Knowing that your story matters. Whether you sing or make people laugh or paint or coach or consult or write manuals or make money in your pajamas. Your story matters to the one who needs to hear it. So, she was leaning against the counter, sorting tips. Worn hands, worn heart, aching hips. Every moment or two, almost evenly spaced, she'd blow the hair out of her face. She'd once been prettier, so they said, when she wore that crown upon her head, and from her flower-covered float, she'd blown a kiss and swore life couldn't get any better than this. But she'd been mistaken, as she learned that night. thanks to a storm and a grounded flight and a thought leader who in all his pompous glory reached out and helped her change her story. So to all of you out there wondering if you're good enough, you matter, if you can do this. To all of you out there wondering if someone is receiving your gift, please remember this story as proof that they are, told by this motivational speaker whose friends call her Star.
In case you might have missed that, that is a perfect example of the power of words and the gift of storytelling. Please thank Kelly Swanson one more time.